Hello, yes? Is this thing on? Hello? Hello? Who it is? Oh, hello! And now welcome to another episode of How to Make Mushroom Things live. It's really hot here, by the way. I'm in Colorado, and the sun is literally just blasting down on me, and I'm in the shade, so it's really hot. Anyway, happy Sunday, everyone. I figured, given current events and all the news, everything's going to shit, so might as well post another tutorial. Anyway, I had a whole bunch of jokes and I forgot them. That was cool. Knew that was gonna happen. Anyway, I'm outside and I've got a bunch of co-stars today. So I am making supplies. I'm making corn jars. Corn jars are used for spawn. So what happens is I would take an agar transfer, spores, or liquid culture, and I would apply them to the corn jar. Corn jar turns solid white. I've already done tutorials on that and shown you a lot of that. One second, gotta turn the propane down because I'm dealing with fire. Yeah, boy. Wait, let me turn around. Do. Gotta press the dead man switch. Boop, boop, boop. Boop. It's sort of like in The Expanse, when he's going through the you-know-what, he has to press the dead man switch. Boop, boop, boop. Anyways, turn that down a little bit. So, this is what I'm doing today. I'm sterilizing things. I've got a propane jar that I took from my grill, and I've got a pressure cooker that you can buy on Amazon, you can buy in Target, you can buy basically any place that isn't a, well, you can buy it any place. Anyways, got that on a propane burner that's meant to fry a turkey. Much like Alton Brown likes to say, safety first. So I am outdoors, I'm on fireproof concrete, and I've got a literal professional grade hose sitting next to me where I can spray anything down. So what's in the pot? These. The corn jars I was talking about. So, what is this? This is a 1 quart spawn jar. And like I was saying, spores, agar transfers. I've actually used the key to this, though, by the way, is to make sure that the pressure doesn't go overboard. You're trying to find the perfect balance between keeping that pressure on and keeping that rocker going a maddening amount of time versus how much propane or how much fire and heat you've got it. And so I know how to do this on the cooktop, but here with the dead man switch, I have to pay attention. And the propane's a little bit more sketchy because there's also the sun. And now the temperature has gone from, I think it was like 60 earlier, 60, 70, and now it's like 100. It's fine, it's really fine. Anyways, corn. What's in here? This is organic, non-GMO corn. Buy it online. Corn greater than wood chips. Let me explain this. So, these spawn jars aren't for fruiting. So fruiting blocks would be made with hardwood blends, and I've actually got that over here. I made those earlier. Ooh, that's warm. See? That is my own blend of sawdust and everything else. I actually recommend if you search up, I think it's Maker's Blend or Master's Blend. It's 50% soy husks, 50% sawdust, and then you can amend that any further that you want for the species that you're doing, and that's hardwood. These are before that, right? So what I do is I take one of these that is turned all white and everything, and I pour one of these into those. So in here is organic non-GMO corn. On the top, you can see I've got a self-healing injection port. And what this allows me to do is if I'm doing liquid culture, I can just go just like you're getting a penicillin shot in your butt. This is a 100 or something crazy like that millimeter filter patch. You can also use micropore tape. Micropore tape you can actually buy at CVS or Walgreens or basically any pharmacy because it's first aid tape. It's sterile and it's got pores, and so it allows things to breathe. And so that's the key here. What you want to do with this corn is, I've been prepping this all day. Literally, I probably started around 7 or 8 a.m. You take this, you buy the corn is dry, you can use popcorn, anything else like that. I highly recommend just watching what you're putting in your body, use organic, blah, blah, blah. I'm growing vegetables over there. Tangents. Anyways, what you do is you take the corn and you just pour it in a giant pot, you cover it in water, and then you rinse it a couple of times, right? You pour off the water, and you're basically trying to aim until you can rinse it off until the water runs clear, and that blows off all of the starch. You don't want starch. Starch is bad. Starch does not feed mycelium. Starch feeds everything else. And remember what I've been saying, you're trying to create a environment that is not contamination free, right? You're never going to get rid of contamination. Contamination is literally competing organisms, right? And so we sterilize it, we cook it, we do everything else like that. But by the very act of opening things up, even though you're in a sterile environment, you're going to introduce things. So you're creating an ecosystem that's ideal for the mushroom mycelium, right? The fungi mycelium. And so take a breath. So what I do here is you pour it and you boil it, right? And so your goal is to boil it for, I generally boil it for an hour, hour and a half. Your goal is to not cook it, not make it super duper duper soft, but you want to break it down, right? Just a little bit. You want to be able to squish it, but not, it shouldn't be just soft. It shouldn't be falling apart. Anyways, then what you do once that's cooked is you rinse it off a whole bunch in super duper hot water, as hot as you can get it. The hotter the better, because that boils off even more starch, right? You don't want starch. Starch bad. So once you're done, you throw it into a jar, and now in theory, if you've got something set up like this, or just mush corn for mushrooms, yes. With the filter patch and the ability to breathe, you could technically just cook it. But here's the secondary problem that you're going to run into. In addition to competing organisms and starch, you're going to run into this with bran or any other mixture that you're applying, agar, liquid, culture, or something else like that, right? Again, ecosystem control. In Texas, specifically in Texas barbecue, I moved from Boston to Texas, from Texas to here. And one of the things that you learn when you're making barbecue there is that there's something called the Texas crutch, right? And so what the Texas crutch is when you're making brisket, you can wrap it in foil, right? Or butcher paper or something else like that during the cooking process. And that effectively allows you to cheat. You can do a lot of things like dropping it into a cooler. You can do all sorts of great things. It really improves the flavor, cooks it a little bit longer. You can take it off the heat, right? Because one of the big things with barbecue is that you're trying to actually introduce a lot of moisture. With mushrooms, it's the inverse. You don't like a lot of ambient moisture. It's not like a fruiting chamber where you want high humidity like a garden or a greenhouse. So, how do we crutch? How do we cheat? Organic vermiculite. It's the star of the show. It's like Iron Man to your Tony Stark. Organic vermiculite. What vermiculite does is it's just normally dry. And what it will do is it actually absorbs all of the extra moisture in the air. So basically, in the jar, anything not consumed by the mycelium, the corn, etc. And then if it's needed, in other words, if there isn't enough moisture to balance the ecosystem, the vermiculite will dry out and release it. Now, what you see in dirt, or soil, rather, because there is no such thing as dirt, is perlite, which is another thing you could actually use. I always stick to vermiculite. It's nice, it's super fine, it works really well. You can use perlite in bags or monotubs and things like that. Anyways, so here, just before I put the corn in, right, I take and I drop about, if it's a 1 quart jar, 1 tablespoon of finely ground vermiculite. Then, or if it's a pint, which is in the pan, and I'm not going to reach over there and grab it because I've already burned it out of my hand a couple of times. So for a pint, you drop in half a tablespoon, and for a quart, a full tablespoon. You can add more, you can add less. It doesn't really matter. That's what I use. It works really, really well. The mycelium loves these jars, right? I have never seen colonization, right? So I'm doing a bunch of tests, right? So scientifically speaking, using the scientific method, I'm going to do a control, and then I'm going to do A and B. And so I've actually run with rice, with bran, with all sorts of other things, and really corn just works really, really, really well because it's very easy to keep consistent, keep at field capacity, which is why you boil it. You're trying to introduce enough water into this that it can hit field capacity, which is basically behind me, my yard. My yard is at field capacity when it can no longer absorb any more moisture, but it's not running off. Like, you want to squeeze the water out, right? And it's drip. So it's almost like when you're making mud pies as a kid and you really wanted a good mud pie, you had to just keep it just dry enough that it was almost like frothy, almost like a chocolate mousse, right? That's a good mud pie, not like that heavy blacky stuff. Anyways, that's what's in the jar. Vermiculite, corn, and then what happens next is it is then tossed into a pressure cooker for 90 minutes, right? And the reason why you do that is you want to sterilize it. You don't want to pasteurize this, right? Because you're going to be dealing with, in an ideal scenario, you're doing this in space, in a vacuum. You're doing this in space in a vacuum, etc. And so what you really want to do is you want to destroy any chance of life existing inside of this jar until you introduce the mycelium. And so what you do is you cover this in foil like this. Got my yerba Morte. Morte is God. Hey chickens, come on, you can come over here. It's not scary. Sorry, 1 sec. So ladies, that's my crew. Sup, two crew? That's the one right here over on the right is Chicken Captain Janeway. He is the captain of the USS Chicken Face. Joining her is Chicken of 9, Dr. Beverly Klecker, and many more. Or at least 6. I'm only on 6. Ooh, I hate that sound. Anyways, so cover it in foil, and then you pressure cook it for 90 minutes. That sterilizes it, makes a really great and fantastic environment. It's just really time consuming, and assembling everything is a kind of a pain in the butt. Now, why these and not plastic bags. These are reusable. I can mail these, I can ship these, I can drop them, smash them, beat them, smack them. Trust me, I've done everything. You just can't freeze them and then introduce them to heat. Just, they're not Superman. Anyways, so that's number one. Number two, I can reuse these for other things like pickling food, storing food, storing water. I like water. Use these to drink too. Mason jars are basically beautiful, and if you want to upcycle them, you can bedazzle them. Right? You can glue shit onto them. Anyways, enough bedazzling. I love mason jars, and then the secondary reason is that they're really easy to sterilize, right? And they're glass, nothing sticks to them, unless you really do something wrong. And so a bunch of them fit in a pressure cooker. Inside of a normal pressure cooker, you can fit, I think it's a 16 quart, you can fit 10 1-pint jars, and I think 8 1-quart jars. I can't remember everything off the top of my head. Anyways, after you're done cooking, you're ready to do everything else. You're done. It's just really time. So, what else have I done today, right? So, I mentioned the hardwood blocks. Hardwood! So, for your wood-loving species that basically include everything that you care about, Maitake, which is Batman of the Woods. Duh. Do it. Anyways, Maitake, reishi, oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms will actually just grow on everything, which is the other experiment that I'm doing. Anyways, any hardwood loving species, which is basically most of them, except for the ones that love poop. And so for those, what I actually do is I do a mixture of, usually I just buy pasteurized or sterilized substrate. Usually pasteurized because reasons. Composted stuff, and then I mix that with the hardwood. And what that does is, instead of mixing it with something that's completely inert, that gives your dung-loving species that really nice ecosystem that it would actually find inside of the forest, say under a tree where animals have pooped, chickens have pooped, everyone's pooped, or Swatney's pooped. Space corn. Anyway, that's for the sawdust, and that's actually why I buy a bunch of poop lint, right? Now, the experiment that I'm doing, I've already done this once before, which is I'm using straw. Now, straw has a couple of things I don't like, which is it stinks. It smells like poop. It just stinks. Straw just, there's nothing nice about the smell of straw when it's wet and it's cooked, etc. It's just awful. And when it's decomposing, it's even worse. But oyster mushrooms grow like weeds on straw. Now, they'll grow like weeds on hardwood, but for the experiment, what I want to do is I actually want to fill these bags with hardwood. So I have an equal ratio here. I've got a 5-pound fruiting block, and I'm going to bake a whole bunch of 5-pound straw logs. Right? Set of these, and then I'm going to impact seal them. Bob Jonko. I'm going to fill them full of straw that I've already pasteurized. And then I'm going to break into song, which is once, twice, 3 times pasteurized. Oh, straw is stinky, so you make it clean. I can't sing for... Anyways, so for the straw, what I do is I actually pour a whole bunch of boiling water, which is how I burned myself repeatedly today. And my hands are just a tragic, painful, arthritic mess of burns. Anyways, so what you do with the straw, or what I'm doing with the straw rather, is you pour boiling water and then you seal it. And so this is where Home Depot or Jack's or Tractor Supply carries these food grade you can usually find it in the feed section. So if you have the chickens, where'd you go, chickens? Well, okay. I made a dirt box for the chickens, but Axel loves it. Oh, let's go see him in his natural environment. Oh, he's in the chicken dirt box. Look at him. He loves it. It stinks. Alright, anyways. That's my next task, is cleaning all that. Anyways, the chickens are behind me. So anyways, you get these really awesome lids, and what you do is you fill the bucket full of straw, not too much because otherwise you flood your kitchen, which I've already done once. Ask my better half. It stinks and it's awful and it looks like pee-pee. And I wondered if I actually accused the dogs of peeing on the floor a couple of times. I was like, oh look, I just overfilled it and it flooded. Wet straw. Anyways, fill it full of that, pour boiling water, and then you seal it. So these haven't been opened since I did that this morning. And then once I'm done doing this, talking to you, I'm going to go and fill these bags. And I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible, but cool air conditioning. I'm trying to keep it as sterile as possible, or as clean as possible, but my philosophy of this is sort of Darwinian, which is I'm using power tools, I'm outside, right? Nothing out here is sterile. I'm petting dogs, see? Turn it all around. Yeah, buddy, I love you too. Stinky. Smells like the straw. Anyways, I'm out here. Nothing out here is sterile. In fact, it's just what, nature intended. It is the opposite of sterile. But in the process of cooking all of this, and I'm going to turn the gas back on because I forgot to press the dead man switch. Come back to me. Cool. Anyways, not sterile, but I'm going to cook it. And so with the straw, I've already pasteurized it once. Now after I pack these bags, I'm going to pasteurize it one more time, which is basically 30 minutes at 15 psi in the pressure cooker. These bags will be nice and pasteurized again. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day what I'm doing, or if I cover them with oil or anything else like that, because in the process of cooking them, right, when I open up, when I take them off the heat, right, these jars, I'm going to have them inside in a house that has a HEPA air filter and so on and so forth. I keep my house clean. It's going to be inside. At the end of the day, if there's going to be a competing bacteria in this type of scenario, it's not like an agar plate, right? It's not, you don't want it to be space. You're trying to get as close as you can. So, if there's competing bacteria, then let oyster mushrooms sort it out. And by the way, oyster mushrooms, given that they will literally grow on anything, right, poop included, oyster mushrooms will just... I have actually had oyster mushrooms start to fruit. And so once these are completely solid with mycelium, I pour them into the bag, etc. And sometimes there's little corn pebbles, like little dingleberries of mycelium. And I've actually had pink oyster mushrooms, like this little corn pebble at the bottom of the jar that was just stuck to the side and I was too lazy to pick out. I've actually had it start to fruit, and I didn't take any pictures because I was just sort of like, what? Anyways, so that's that. So just to recap, corn jar, we're going to cheat with the Texas Fresh, also known as organic vermiculite in the bottom. Picks up the ambient moisture. We boil the corn for about an hour, hour and a half. That introduces it to, that makes it field capacity, which is nice and moist, but not too moist. But the vermiculite will help clean up any other, ambient humidity that you've got. use the finely ground stuff because I've used the rough stuff. The rough chopped vermiculite. It's not. It works, but the mycelium binds around everything. Like mycelium will grow through, around. It looks like it absorbs things, right? And so using the rough chop stuff, you don't get a lot of surface area introduced, but the surface area that you get, just the mycelium just like fills that void, and it actually makes it really hard to break apart. So it's also practical. Anyways, finely ground, cover it in foil. It's got a nice filter patch. Oops, gotta turn down the gas. Gas. There we go. Now I hate the sound of this, which is why I do it outside. Also the smell, it doesn't smell great, especially the hardwood, because you're using soy husks. Soy husks smell like poo-poo. Everything sooner or later in this process smells like poo-poo. It's not necessarily poo-poo, but it smells like poo-poo. And honestly, doing this inside of the house sucks. Anyways, keep a filter. You're trying to keep it clean, but at the end of the day, you're sterilizing it inside of a pressure cooker, which I've got running over here, connected to a propane. Ding ding. Sup, ding dong? This is my buddy Churchill. Churchill, how old are you? Zeke, how old is your youngest daughter? I'm that age, I'm old, and I love food. I love you, buddy. Where are you going? Oh, he just wants more pets. Anyways, propane. Hook that up. You boil that off, or you sterilize that for 90 minutes. So there's a difference, and I screwed this up the first couple of times I started off, which is pasteurization is lower, same temperature, just a different amount of time, right? And so sterilization, what you're trying to do is you're trying to penetrate everything, like Star Trek. 90 minutes sterilizes. If I did that for 30 minutes, it would be pasteurization. Pasteurization does not guarantee a clean environment. So, anyways, I'm gonna let everyone go. Lexi, where'd you go? Lexi, come back. Everyone needs to say hello to you. Come on, Lexi. Ooh, this is my mascot. She is anal retentive, and I love her. And again, nothing is sterile because I'm cooking it, and then I'm going to release the air that's all trapped in there. I'm going to let it repressurize inside of an area that is clean, not covered in trash, not covered in food, not covered in anything. No, I love you too. Yeah. It's going to be clean, and then the air is HEPA filtered. You can hear the air conditioning running behind me, and that HEPA filtration, in theory, gets rid of their dank. Because trust me, I've already had their fur in my hair off my face, specifically eyebrows. Actually contaminate stuff before. The nice thing is that oyster mushrooms don't care, and they're just like grown anyway. But it's ruined other things like enoki, reishi, lion's mane. Lion's mane especially. Lion's mane, just stare at lion's mane sideways and I've ruined it a couple of times. Anyways, that's it. So, you've met the dogs, you've met the chickens, taught you how to make jars. A explained the straw process, sawdust process. Vermiculite. Yeah. Ooh, it's a dog dance party. They know it's the end of the video. Hey. Wait. No. Okay, never mind. Sorry. It was just a random butt snipping.
Have a good night, Micah friends. Peace. Love. Much love.
Love you too, buddy.
Night night.